Tonight, we talk about what we like and did not like about Strange New Worlds Episode 4, and then after that, we're going to take a long, deep dive into the first 2 episodes of the special Kenobi. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. I will get it right next week. And welcome back to your Tuesday night home for movies, games, shows, and books, past, present, and future. I am, of course, your host, Petey York, and I am joined once again by Corione, our witch in residence, Mr. Devil Cry 3, Brandon, aka Twitch streamer, aka wannabe game developer, aka loser. Also, the lovely CnC Karaoke, who's giving me a run for my money with his hat tonight. And, of course, our lovely and beautiful producer, Pollo Zapatos, a.k.a. John, a.k.a. my favorite. That's right, I'm going to make fun of at least one of you per start stream, because I feel like it. Anyway.
So wait a minute, how much do I have to bribe you now to be the favorite? Has that gone up now, or...?
Depending on how much you make in USD versus Canadian dollars, I'll think about it and get back to you. But anyway... Well, with that, we would like to welcome you to our discussion, and we are going to, of course, start off with what we did not like about Strange New Worlds. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us off with that discussion tonight? What did you kind of not like, maybe sort of, could really feel could have been better about Strange New Worlds Episode 4? And if you want to paraphrase, summary, however you want to take the discussion, it's all yours.
Well, spoiler alert, I actually liked the episode. But... that being said, there are some things that I would say could definitely have been cleaned up, and it was more like just logic that I found in this episode in particular. First thing, it was what I've mentioned before is, I mean, okay, you got this new species, and they're going to make this. They're clearly trying to make this a really like important thing, like like the Borg in Next Generation, or the Cardassians, a species in Star Trek that we will associate with this show and with the lore. And they're using the Gorn. It's like, really? I mean, you could have just made any new species named them anything you want and started with a blank slate, but you're using the Gorn. Like, okay. I mean, I suppose opinions will vary on that one, but it does bug me a bit. Beyond that, the things that bothered me about the episode were really, again, like I said, logic related. So you know, they're the part where they're doing the light flashing to communicate, and so the shuttlecraft just happens to have the same like lighting abilities as the Gorn ships in exactly the same formations, and they could just like it's a completely alien species that they have almost no knowledge of, and yet the shuttlecraft is properly equipped with the thing they didn't know was happening before they even got there. You know, and then there's the part where Uhura is getting that big, incredibly heavy thing off of Hemmer, and she just leans back and pushes it with her foot. And maybe it's not a super light thing, but it gave the impression that it was a bit heavier than I think someone could push with their foot. So what else do I have written down here? There was a lot made about the pressure on the hull. And the Enterprise is about to completely get crushed by it. But we'll just send a shuttlecraft out. It's all good, even though it just completely destroyed that small Gorn ship. I mean, I went with it, but I don't think it was necessary from a writing standpoint to include that kind of a detail without explanation.
Yeah, I thought the shuttle deployed just before they went down, but I only watched the episode one time this week, so I would have to. And I actually watched it the day it came out, so I should have watched it again over the weekend, but that's okay. Why don't we go with Brandon? Brandon, you're our resident anti-Trekkie, and not really anti-Trekkie, but you're our resident sort of outsider, which is why we love having your perspective, because you get to watch this without any of the additional stipulation. But what did you kind of find in this episode that you're like, eh?
Well, I mean...
Oh, and of course I also should probably say, welcome Maria, glad to have you back as always. Always happy to have your contribution and your input. Looking forward to hopefully PJ drops in for a little bit. And of course everyone else who decides to come, new and old fans. Everybody's welcome here.
So, the whole episode for me was like... And this has been more and more my position towards the show of it's not bad. It's relatively enjoyable, but I don't think it's particularly good either. Like, even as not having all of the lore that they could be just trampling all over, even without having that as a possibility for me because I don't know, it's just it's enjoyable. It's not to give you an example, without saying anything about what we're talking about earlier, I watched both the Obi-Wan and that show last night together. After watching it today at work, I was talking to a coworker. I was like, dude, you should definitely watch Obi-Wan. It was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. It didn't bring up Star Trek at all. It's enjoyable. If someone asked me about it, I'd say, I mean, you'll probably enjoy it. It's not like that episode. There was definitely some stuff because I had to take care of some things, but I missed the people coming back to the ship, and then at one point I was like, wait, when did they return? I was just did I miss that? Was I not looking? These people were all in this I thought for sure I was going to get this really cool moment on the planet because there was all this blood everywhere, and the most you get was a jump scare from a dog, and I was like, we're gonna give me more? So there's this cool, it had the right ambiance. It was a great moment for this really rough situation. And it just kind of went, next thing you know, we're talking to the captain on the ship. And all of a sudden, to find a ship with people on it. I was like, okay, so you could have had a really cool ambush scene on the planet, as well as in space, preventing the people from returning to the ship and having them split apart, being its own problem as they're trying to deal with these situations. And instead, we just Like, you set up this cool moment and just gloss right past it. It's just over it. I was like, that was the one moment in the whole episode where I was like, all right, cool, something, you got my attention, and then it was just over. And I was like, I feel like I've been cheated here.
All right. John, what about you? What did you not like about this week's Strange New Worlds?
I didn't really have a lot of complaints, though. I do agree with Brandon. Of the two shows I watched for this stream, I kind of ignored everything about Strange New World. I was gonna go back and rewatch it today just to spin up on it, and instead I just looked up some other people's reviews to remember the pacing and everything. Because I was more focused on Kenobi.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we're gonna go ahead and transition to our Kenobi discussion. Since
no, I do have things that
carry on. You get
bored me about
Go continue.
Well, so things that did bored me about the show. It was mostly just the fact that it feels like every episode is the end of the ship moment. Like, they go from, oh, this is a calm day, to, oh no, we've come across another life-threatening storm and the ship will go down if we don't have our witty bridge crew. And it's just kind of starting to get like, and it's annoying because it's not even like the same fight, so you're kind of excited to learn about what's gonna happen, but at the same time you're like, I could use a cooling off period or a ramp up period. Like, the ship that they fought to like meet the Gorn was literally like the size of the cruiser, or of their the little shuttle, right? And it nearly took them out, like just ready to obliterate them, and they're like barely surviving all of a sudden. So like the chance of them coming into contact with even bigger Gorn ship, they're like, oh, we're done. And it's like, well, weren't you guys done when that other bigger ship showed up last episode? And weren't you done when that big thunderstorm showed up last episode? It's just like, oh wait, I got those two back in a circle, the Comet versus the other one. So it's just kind of like obnoxious, you know? The only time we've seen them be the biggest ship in the room is when they were fine in the first episode. And now suddenly they're just constantly coming up with daunting task after daunting task, and that was like the only thing I would say that's starting to.
Every bad guy's bigger than the Enterprise. That's kind of what that's what the TNG movies suffered from that as well, and so does that. Easily one of the drawbacks of Star Trek 2009 and Into Darkness is the fact that, you know, it's these bigger imposing ships, and it's like, okay, we already did that with the motion picture. We get it. There's some ships that are bigger out there, but I totally hear what you're saying, and I agree. It'd be nice if there was some, you know, when's the Enterprise gonna get her day of being the imposing force? But with
well,
that,
it's not even just her being the imposing force. It's just she's always at stake. Like, everybody on board is going to die this episode. Tune in next week to see how. And that's what's getting a little exhausting.
So then you'd probably really like the TNG episode Data's Day then. I would definitely recommend you check that one out.
Just rewatched every... Like I just caught up. I think I'm on season 2, episode 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're getting there. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to Corione's thoughts on what he did not like about Strange New Worlds episode 4.
Okay, so we've seen that the commander lives in a palatial estate on the ship. We've seen that the second in command has a room that, you know, I'd be jealous of at, like, as a presidential suite at a hotel in Vegas. And now we've seen Noonien Singh's place, which, I mean, as a lieutenant, dude, the room is still impressive. That's a 5-star hotel suite. And yet they still have Lahura living in a closet under the stairs. I don't get what's going on here and who assigns the rooms in this ship and how this ship is laid out. This ship is getting to the point of having TARDIS level, you know, bigger on the insideness.
Dude, I bet you it resembles the modern military quite well. All the enlisted ones are 2 to a room, and it's a 1-person room with a shared bathroom.
Okay, but like even two
you
to
get
a
that.
room would be okay. 2 to a room would be impressive. We saw 3 to 4 to a room with Lahura.
Oh no, the enlisted, not the officer
yeah.
corps. The officer
Yeah.
corps gets those big rooms with full-size bathrooms, spring showers, you know.
Yeah, I think
As
we're
it
up to
should
like
be.
half
Okay.
the saucer section being occupied by crew quarters at this point. So
Officer, everybody else is below decks. Remember?
yeah,
there's
all
that
the all
little
the
show
enlisted
about
get
the lower
squeezed
decks?
in next to the warp core.
Squeezed in nothing. They're like there are Japanese dudes pushing them into the rooms at this point. And I mean, hell, even the cargo hold looked friggin' cavernous. Like, I half expected the Enterprise is carrying around the Ark of the Covenant in there while we're at it.
You know, when I deployed, I was in a tent. So like in the tents that we had, and note, I was in the Air Force, so even then they weren't the worst on the planet. But like even then, someone would go and hang curtains to kind of make cubicles, if you will, and those cubicles had bunk beds. And if you were lucky, you didn't get a bunk mate. But then when you went in transit, you definitely had a bunk mate. And like the sleeping space was about the same as like what she had going on, because if you watch her get out, there was a spot above her too on the wall. Like most of those were like it was a thing where it's like if you just took down all the curtains and then closed off the beds, it could have been equivalent to like if you just put all the beds around the edge of the tent and then just left the center as a calmer space. It would be kind of similar. But then you're right, on the flip side, you go and have these rooms that you could put comfortably several officers in and still have a lot of space. You were muted, John.
Like, I'll admit, okay, my experience is I've seen enlisted bunks in the Canadian Armed Forces many, many times. And I dated an Air Force officer, so I've seen what they had room for and what their butler had room for. But, that's Air Force. But at the same time, like, to me, this is just this seems outrageous, the disparity here. We take a look
not
at what
just
Kirk
the disparity.
or even Picard had. They're not this big.
If you think about it, though, it's like, who has time to spend any time in their room? Like, what's with all this? Like, it seems like they do 16-hour days, 8-hour rest cycles, and that's it. Like, they're moving around the ship doing multi-functions or learning new functions. Like, it seems to be like a
Or being
continuous
background
rotation of
characters.
doing somebody else's job, right? And it seems like there would be no actual need for any form of communal area. Like, rewatching TNG, I'm noticing why there's so much common area, and it's because there's so many common people. Like, they're
Well, they also have
literally
civilians
on an
on board.
adventure.
On the
That's what I
Enterprise.
mean. Like, they justify the common space by having common people do common things, but on this ship, like, everybody has a duty. There is no spare space except for everybody's bedroom.
Yeah,
Right.
the only other thing that kind of, I don't know, it bugged me, was we're talking about how in this environment, shields don't work, we have to shut down all the main power, everything's, and yet, we're watching the ship slowly, get crumbled by this environment, and as they're coming out, suddenly they throw on the force fields on every individual biobed. It feels like to me maybe they would have to wait until they were clear of something before, like, every, biobed gets, like, its own protective shell casing. Like, I could totally...
Well,
I would have
It could
bought...
be
would've
that the biobeds are escape pods.
Maybe, but I mean, I would have totally bought... I think it just would have looked better to me if we had seen a whole bunch of doctors and nurses and, like, random enlisted dudes quickly running over and just, like, attaching straps. Right? Like, that to me just would have been a better choice.
Admittedly, it's been a while since I've looked this up, but I mean, how many people are even supposed to be on the Enterprise? Because I thought it was only like 100, and the Next Generation was 1,000 or something.
Yeah, the TOS, Kirk's original Enterprise in Star Trek, the original series, is, just Star Trek, is 450. And that's
Okay.
on a much smaller size ship compared to the Enterprise we have in Strange New Worlds, though, too. And then,
Yeah.
the Enterprise D is supposed to be 1,000, and then... But, actually,
How
I want
much
to touch
of
on
that
real
is-
quick, since you brought it up. Or, sorry. Someone say something?
Yeah, I
I
was
just
about to
have.
quickly.
Oh yeah. You
I
go
was
first,
just about
Carrie.
to quickly pack in that
Oh,
on the
yeah.
400 number. They also mentioned in Deep Space Nine, when they were seeing the ship, they were like, "Wow, they really packed them in on these old ships."
They pack in a lot of luxury condos on the Enterprise. I mean, I think we should do a commercial for that about moving to the Enterprise luxury suites or something. I think that'd be funny.
I mean, with rent the way it is, people would probably go for it.
Yeah,
Dude,
right. Yeah,
if
live
that
in
was
outer
what
space.
my
Nice.
enlistment had been like, I would have never gotten out.
Exactly. That's exactly
That was
right.
like one of the biggest disparities was the housing situation.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
no, I do
I
want
was
to
just
touch on
gonna
the
say-
the ship sizes thing though. I think that the scaling of the vessels I think goes back to what I've already mentioned, and welcome 96 BB fan who
Saying
is
hi-
here to
hi to
say hi
Chris.
to Mr. Chris Karaoke. So the sizing, I think, goes back to what I mentioned about the technological change for whenever the shows are updated, they kind of update the technology for the time that we have now. And I think that's kind of what happens with the Enterprise over time. Like the 2009 movies, the Enterprise is is bigger than the Enterprise D by that time. And again, having served on a ship myself, that kind of actually makes sense that they've scaled the ships up, because if you think about the implications of traveling deep space, how much of a ship you're actually going to need to bring with you, and the fact that in the 1960s when the first Enterprise hit the airwaves, no one was really had
They
an
were
idea
just-
of what space. They had the shuttlecraft as a.
Well,
or did they?
yeah,
No.
exactly. They had the shuttlecraft coming up. I mean, right in
Yeah, so
69.
they knew
but
that
then
the
they
early-
also, you also have to remember their like biggest ship. I don't even think they had like giant aircraft carriers yet. Right?
They did. Yeah, Cold War era.
Okay.
They definitely had some
So-
of those Eisenhower class aircraft carriers were definitely out there.
But the biggest ones are modern. The new nuclear ones and stuff like that are much
Yeah,
bigger and
and-
more powerful. So like these people are scaling that up to space travel, and it turns out like
right. And
modern
96
case, it's
BB
closer
fan,
to a
yes,
cruise ship.
we are about to discuss what we do like about this show, so don't worry, it's not all negative Nancy's here. But that said, with the scaling of the ship, it's understandable because yes, John, you're right. The ships have also gotten bigger. The aircraft carriers at that time you had were like World War II era, which I don't remember the crew complement off the top of my head. I think it was around about 1,000. And so as time has gone on, it's like, okay, we've realized, okay, we probably would have bigger starships by now that could probably hold more people. That would probably, so that's why, so that's just another
Well,
point I'm
and
trying to make. But
Let's
as
not
far as
forget
stuff
the
that,
other thing. Let's not forget the other thing that Into Darkness did kind of wrong is the idea of it being more about a one-man army
right,
trying to build ships for smaller crews. It's like that defeats the entire purpose of exploration. The more people that get out there and see it, the more people that can sell it to
yeah,
other
and that's
explorers.
kind of what was silly about the pilot episode of Strange New Worlds was a ship crewed by 3 whole people. It's like, that's to go make first contact. Like, that really, come on, that's just lazy. But
That one seemed more like those investigatory ones where they try to meet up with the team that's like already on the ground.
right, the first reconnaissance vessel, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that ship. That was the vibe I was getting from it, but
Yeah.
they weren't saying that.
Yeah. So as far as stuff I didn't like about this episode, I think you guys kind of touched on a lot of those areas. I do think that they did kind of sell the Hura lifting the thing off of Hemmer for me because, she did try it first while standing up and then she sat down, and so I was like, okay, they're trying to put the illusion out there. It's not like she just walked up and kicked it. So, which would have been entertaining, but also really terrible. Yeah, I think you guys bring up a lot of good points about some of it, especially you Devil Cry 3 pointing out the fact that you were more excited for Star Wars than Strange New Worlds. But that said, I do think that episode 4 is the strongest one so far. I think that there was a lot of good moments overall that outweigh the 5,000 square foot apartments inside the ship. And so I really love the relationship that they're building between Hemmer and Uhura. I think that is a fantastic pairing of two characters, because it's like, here Uhura has to learn to respect the wisdom, but Hemmer has to be respectful of his tutelage and of his person, and accept the fact that she might actually know a few things more than what he anticipates. He's probably
That was
used to
actually an
dealing with
interesting
idiots.
thing, because you saw him stutter in his when she started to express her actual understanding. He was like, finally.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Like that's what every teacher in the entire world wants. They want to call you stupid, and you come back at them with your knowledge, and they're like, I don't have to jump off at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that dynamic between them is just fantastic. Two great characters overall. I mean, I really hope that we get more to Uhura's backstory than tragic accident. Like if they make that like a conspiracy situation, I think that will boost that whole thing with her past.
I feel like that's contrived, because if you go too much into the individual reasons for joining Starfleet, it makes Starfleet seem way more unique. And the idea of Starfleet is to be and it doesn't matter where you came from. So if we keep making it matter where you came from, then suddenly it's well, I don't really feel like a hero enough to even join, so I won't join.
So yes, there is wisdom in just letting it go altogether, and I can definitely see the point in that. I just, like I said, there's a lot. I thought the whole chemistry on the bridge was really strong, with the whole situation of turning it into a sub v sub, Hunt for Red October situation. I've heard some complaints about the sonar that they created by bouncing off signals through the cloud. That's kind of how radar works, I guess. People don't know that.
I heard a really positive remark on that, and it was from Mr. Know-It-All, and he said that the reason that sensor exists was because it naturally recognizes anything that comes in contact with the ship. So because they're touching the space dust, the ship needs to know how much is doing any kind of damage at all, and suddenly it's we can just radar and sonar this shit.
Yeah,
because it's something it's already doing.
Right, and so to touch on that a little bit, because the way that radar typically works, or sonar similarly, is that it's, radar actually stands for, it's a half acronym, half short name. Radio, detection, and ranging. It just sends out a radio signal, and then if it touches something, that signal return is what you get. So it is entirely possible to have a radar system that can navigate through clouds and distinguish between the different particulates. And so it's not entirely...
That's exactly what
the realm of
speed guns that police officers use to get your car. They shoot out a wide frequency beam to pick up your metal at the rate of speed it's going. So it's literally just shooting light out and then getting what it gets back at the thing, at the speed that it gets it back, and then it does the math calculation. The ship is way more advanced than that. It can pick up all the signals.
Well, yeah,
and it can also
the Enterprise has sensors that can pick up ships traveling faster than the speed of light. So, I mean, it's really not that hard to buy that they... I mean, at least I actually like that they took the time to actually try and explain a system that they work together. So, so yes, overall, I liked it. I think it's good. I think we're still heading the right direction. But yes, I think, sadly, Brandon, you're right. It's not in the territory of, am I in love with it? I'm in love with the theme song. I still enjoy watching Anson Mount. I think Lieutenant Hemmer is reason enough to show up every week. And with that, Corione, I'm going to switch it back to you. I think we're just going to go backwards this time.
Cool.
We're going to go clockwise.
So being somebody who studied physics in school, they covered redshift. That's awesome! And they actually did not do a terrible job of it. They actually explained it reasonably well, and why it's a thing, and why they could use it in this situation. So I loved that. I loved that Hemmer had to do something he wasn't accustomed to, which was rely on others. I loved that they explained why he can be, what his moral behavior for it is because we had previously heard that all the Einar are pacifists. And he explains, look, I won't take up arms in anger, but I will certainly defend the people I care about and defend the ideals that I care about. And that's completely reasonable. And I thought that was a really great way to set up a moral grounding that we can have the character work under. I love that they did them, that they quickly made it clear.
Welcome, Orville Nation. Sorry.
Yeah. I love that they did the
Better be here
logic
next
of,
week,
look,
PJ.
the ship the lower decks are going to be affected by the gravity first. So we should probably evacuate as much as we can of that now so we don't have the problem later. I loved that too. They did some stuff really well. I loved that we actually, from the Noonien Singh character, that actress was able to portray sheer abject terror really, really well. Like, there was some solid acting out of her.
And she did it with bearing. Like, she
Yes.
had a very military bearing to the terror. Like, you knew she was afraid, but you also knew she was trying to hide it.
Exactly. That I loved. They did it right. That actress, I mean, yes, she's been playing it stiff so far, but we're starting to see through some of the cracks. We're starting to see some characterization from her as well. And that's wonderful. We are getting to the point in the series where they're actually allowing the actors and actresses to play with their character a little bit. And they don't feel as stiff. They feel a little, you can see them relaxing into the roles a little bit. And that's a very good thing. And that's a very good sign for the series long term, that they're going to be comfortable with these characters.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to take it back real quick. That is another good point I forgot. Totally forgot, but thank you for bringing it back up. They, to their credit, the writers managed to hype up the Gorn pretty good in this episode. Even though it's an enemy that I'm familiar with, I kind of, not that it was to the level of TNG's hype with the Best of Both Worlds, but they were definitely channeling those vibes and that energy. And it felt like, I was like, shit, Gorn are actually a decent threat in this show, apparently. And it was very convincing, and you're right. She sold it. She was the one that put on the fear and was like, oh man, this is a big deal. Okay, so that's and then there's the conflict that people say about, oh well, the Gorn, it's different, it's a misunderstanding when we see them in TOS. Okay, we're not at TOS yet. This is the early stage. This is like it was with the Romulans up until after Balance of Terror. This is an unknown enemy that is behaving the way that it's going to behave, and how it might be perceived is going to change over time, and that relationship changes with the Federation and the Gorn over time. But at first, it's like when you move in with new neighbors and you don't want to see them, but you guys start giving each other grief and doing passive-aggressive nonsense. And so that's kind of what it is on a bigger scale. But go ahead.
I'd actually argue that they're doing this right because, and I've got precedent to back this up, just with inside Next Generation. Because within Next Generation, it was made very clear that this was the first time they were formally introduced to the Ferengi. But Picard battled them in the Stargazer before the Next Gen series at the Battle of Maxia. So we know that informal pitch battles and what have you do not count towards the formal first contact scenario. So that is entirely why the Gorn could exist as this cosmic boogeyman up until this point. So the guys who have been arguing, well, this isn't canonical, actually, we have canonical reasons to believe that this is how it could go down.
Well, and
Yeah,
not to
just like in the
mention,
Romulan
if we...
Oh, sorry,
off
Chris,
of-
it sounded like you have a thought.
Well, I was going to say, to the episode's credit, they didn't go overboard and have the Gorn board the ship. They didn't go hand-to-hand combat and show us everything about them. They kept them a mystery as as an unknown entity.
Just like Enterprise did with the Romulans. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that adds more credit to Noonan Singh's character because she spends a lot of time in the first few episodes being this very security, shoulders rolled back, I have no joke. Like, she really reminds me a lot of Worf's character in TNG, and she's not a Klingon, right? And that's kind of like very militaristic, especially like when you become the MP, the military police, you're the one that's in charge of all things policing. And so now seeing her be afraid really makes these characters seem much more, you know, scary. But then on top of that, it also lays credence to everything she says next when she explains that, like, they never leave prisoners. The only reason she survived is because she didn't accept death. Like, that's a pretty dark thing to be rewarded for, right? Like, or she accepted death or something. She didn't fear death. She said, take me out or don't, but that's it.
She just assumed she was dead.
Right, and so, and then as soon as, like, you know, they do the light signaling and they go, look, this ship was overtaken by the Gorn, they're like, oh, wait, what? And then they blow it up, like, death to the weak. What that tells us is that, like, the Enterprise that we're watching may actually be the first or one of the very few Federation vessels to A, meet the Gorn, and B, survive the Gorn. So, like, the reason why nobody's ever really heard about them is it's the same reason that, like, the United States has never recognized a submarine going missing. They all just say still in action. And that's the reality is, like, we have no idea which ships are gonna come back. We just keep getting the commander's logs as they come, and then they stop coming. And, you know, maybe the commander quit. Maybe everybody was like, you know what, we're done. We found perfect Eden, new world. We're out of Starfleet. Screw it. Could have. We don't know. We can't. Like, they can't say that didn't happen. It's just as likely as they were taken out by the Gorn.
Yeah. So, Brandon, anything positive to say about episode 4?
I mean, the irony being, like, one of my big complaints is also, like, one of my positive things of, like, where a big failure for me was this moment in the beginning where it's this really good build-up. Like, to me, up until, like, the what I want to call failure of execution, when they're in this dark, outside of the fact that the 2 lights on their suits bothered the shit out of me. I forgot about that till just now. It bothered me so much. I was like, that doesn't make sense. You think there's a threat now, and you have 2 bright lights on your chest. Like, you've created a target. But, like, outside of that, like, the whole moment of, like, they're moving up, they're seeing blood stains because people were very clearly killed. They get to this point where there's this giant spot and drag marks everywhere, and I'm like, you're setting the tone nicely. And to be fair, they do then set the tone for Gorn, and then she then later says, like, they don't leave, you know, people, they don't take prisoners and stuff. But, like, that moment was, I was really into it. I was like, I'm digging this. And then you know, he gets scared by the dog, and, like, it was like that lead up moment of, like, if they were to do something like that again, but, you know, have something on the other end of it, that could be they've already shown me that they can set the tone and the moment of, like, something is coming and something is bad, and it's gonna wreck people. Like, this is gonna get wild and hairy. And, like, I was especially because, just like John was saying, like, while listening to people to try and run Dungeons and Dragons, one of the things I remember specifically, and I didn't even think about this till John said it, was when you create and you're trying to do this long-term game, you can only have a couple world-changing events. If you have too many, they lose, they're not potent anymore. You create turbulence for your party, and you put them in dangerous situations, and you can have events. But world-altering ones should be few and should have an impact. In this case, the ship is our world because we're going to worlds. So, like, the irony being, for us, our world is the ship. Actual worlds are lesser. So, like, if you then go put the party, like, the most vulnerable position is to have these humans and other aliens on a planet and then, you know, cause something to happen where they can't go back and forth, but bad stuff is happening. Like, that is a good moment. But instead, we keep having this, like, oh, the ship's going to destroy again. So, like, within that, though, like you guys were saying, this moment between, I always forget names, Hammer and the linguist chick, because that's the only thing I can remember her as, because I'm terrible with names. Like, outside of the fact that they're pairing initially, like, just in the world of, like, why have you two been paired together outside of, you know, character personalities, like, taking the writer of being like, oh, these characters could be a nice mesh, like, just role-wise, when I first saw them together, I was like, why have you been paired? But, I mean, I agree with you guys in the sense of, like, they are a nice pairing. So I get that. Though, like, the initial pairing of, like, why is the linguist now with the engineer? How does this work? Why, like, how did we end up here in the first place? This is where I'm confused. But there was that moment where, like, it was a good moment where, once again, she was like, yeah, I know this information. Like, I can know these facts. Facts are great. You now want me to do it, and if I mess up, we're dead. Like, we're done. Like, no, this is terrible. And he's like, and he has that moment of, like, you can do it. Like, you know this. You know you know what to do. Do it.
Yeah, it's that moment of, like, realizing that she's been taught to do work, but never actually given the chance to do the work.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's that moment that she once again has needed. Like, she kind of had with Spock, but it was different. Like, once again, it's a life-threatening situation, but, like, she's now had, like, kind of similar. In this case, it's the student-teacher role, and in Spock's case, it was just the, like, look, if you don't do this, we're dead anyways. So, like, either do it. If you don't do it, we die. If you fail, we die. So, do it.
Well, and
like, what?
I think that really gives credence to her character, especially because she actually does portray the cadet very well.
Yes.
Like, the new ensign, like, she's just now running through the ranks, just now gathering experience. But then if we remember her to Shatner's years, where she is literally just the sauce queen, she knows who she is, she knows what she's supposed to do, she never betrays the ship, no matter what. Like, when Captain Kirk is like, hey, everybody evacuate ship but me, she's like, I'm there with you. Like, you can't believe that that's who she becomes until you see her literally have to experience hell on Earth several hundred times, to the point where she just goes, oh yeah, just another Tuesday.
And that's the thing too, where it's like, initially, some of the ways her character's personality in, like, things she says and does, I was like, you're laying it on thick. But at least the actress has done a really good job of, like, in these moments of, like, selling, like, look, I can know things all day, but doing a thing and knowing a thing aren't the same, and you're now wanting me to do it, but also I'm not just doing it, I'm doing it and everyone's at stake. Like, this is not normal. Like, this is crazy. And he's like, well, you know what to do, so do it. Because if you don't do it, like...
Well, and that's the best part, is he left out that because if you don't, like, he was smart enough to tell her,
yes,
you know what you're doing, just do it. Because, like, she was taking on the onus of all of that fear, and he was like, you got to drop it all. You just got to pretend like none of that matters, and all that matters is you're doing your job, and you'll do it by the numbers.
Also, that moment where they're talking about, where she's like, how, specifically talking about his race, which I also forget, but that comes back to just not remembering names, because, God, I'm terrible at that. But she talks about, like, how can you guys, like, how can you just do this? And he explains to her, like, how his people deal with death, and it's just like, you're here to do something, and you don't die until it's done. And then she's like, so what? Like, I'm here to fix things. So, like, it's that moment of, like, it's given her a new thing to try and, like, self-impose and self-interpolate for that character she becomes. Because if she becomes to understand, like, what her role is for the people on this ship, she can become a very strong character for everyone around, because she has this understanding of like, this is who I am and this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
Like,
all right, Chris, why don't you go ahead and give your good thoughts, Brandon, by the way. Sorry to quick
Thank you.
jump, but I'm going to go ahead and let's
No, you're
give
good.
Chris real quick, and then if there's any quick final thoughts, I want to give extra time to Kenobi, not just because you guys seem more excited about it, but there are 2 episodes that we have to pack in, so we'll try and get through all that.
Well, you did kind of hit the mark there. I mean, and we started on that. Admittedly, I mean, I liked this episode more than the first 3. Right? I mean, when I watch a show, maybe I'll watch all the episodes, but if I'm going to rewatch a show, I'll usually say, okay, I know there's 100 episodes. Let me just slice this thing down to 30 or 40 or 50 or something like that and choose them. Maybe I got to watch the pilot because it's the pilot, and it's like, okay, in my head I might as well, it's obligatory. The second and third episodes, honestly, they kind of bored me a little bit. This episode, I don't know if I would watch it on a rewatch, but I wasn't bored. I was entertained. I wasn't really thinking about, it's Spock and, I just had by and large, I enjoyed the quick, snappy movement of the episode. It didn't linger too much in dead space, but yeah, I'm more excited about Kenobi. And I watched Kenobi right after I watched this episode, and I kind of, my thoughts on this episode kind of just quickly faded off. Oh, Kenobi, So, but I'm encouraged. I mean, that's the positive thing. I'm encouraged. I'm willing to watch the rest of the season, and I want it to be awesome and challenge me to forget about my preconceptions. Because if it's just okay, it's gonna fade.
Yeah, and
yeah,
we'll see.
It's definitely a show I'm happy to come back to.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, so just really quick to add onto what Devil Cry was saying about Lahura's character there. When we were studying in school, getting ready for some of the stuff we would deal with, one of the speeches that I got, which, I think really applies to her, is like, there's going to be a day when you're working and everything is going to go absolutely to hell. And you're going to say, like, yeah, I studied this in school, but I've never actually had to do any of it. And then you have a choice. Because you can either just, like, throw your hands up and, like, put in your letter of resignation and walk away, or you can just begin. You can start doing the math. You can solve one problem and then solve the next problem and then solve the last problem. And if you keep solving problems, eventually you get to go home with a paycheck. And that was kind of the speech I got in school. And I feel like, yeah, somebody really, she's getting that from the crew, from each of the crew members she's been, interacting with one by one here as she's been going. And I think that's kind of a good thing, really.
No, yeah, I think it's an absolutely awesome thing. My only issue is that it keeps being the worst case scenario. Like Brandon said, like I feel like we all kind of agree. It's like you gotta have a few breaks. I have been rewatching TNG, and I absolutely love the fact that some of the episodes are equally dramatic, but with like 1% of the stakes. And I'm like, I don't get how you can do it well, but you do.
I don't know how many people would agree with me on this, but I actually enjoyed the third season of Enterprise and the end of season 2.
Same.
Because of the way it built up, and it wasn't always giant stakes. It started, with that great episode where Archer is on trial, and then you just start to experience what that new part of space is in the species in it, and it built up to that final, make or break, life or death. Ship is on the line in the finale of season 3. The payoff pitch. So
yeah,
I agree. I'd like to see that.
It reminds me a lot of the Orville, in terms of like a TNG especially seems like one of the main source materials for Orville, and that's kind of something I do want to see brought back. Is like, the thing about the stakes is like they always try to make them equally balance. Like the ship is as much in danger as the individuals on the ground. The individuals on the ground are as in much danger. And it's like when you watch the Orville or when you watch old Star Trek, it's like there's a lot of episodes where like the people on the ship are bored out of their mind and they're doing the most obscene things. Like there's multiple Sherlock Holmes episodes. There's multiple things about different interests of each character and they're completely personal. It's like you get to learn the fun side of somebody without constantly hearing that they're a fun person from every other character. Instead, you're like, oh, hey, since we're here for 2 weeks and we got nothing else to do you want to spend Saturday in the holodeck doing a thing? But like when you're constantly like, red alert, everybody to their battle stations, it's like even the people at the lower decks are like battle stations, you know, and nobody ever has a personal experience that's individual. And it kind of, it chokes out the fire.
Yeah, like I got to see an episode of like Noonien Singh and Ortega's they're playing like dodgeball professionally in like a house league on the ship or something.
Oh yeah,
I could definitely see a fun rivalry with those two. But with that, I think we've pretty much covered all of our discussion for Strange New Worlds. I am looking forward to the rest of this series. I think we're almost halfway through the first season, and you know, we got to remember TNG season 1 was it is what it is, and even season 2.
I love
Same
it.
with Deep Space Nine, Voyager.
I've been
it's
like
well.
thoroughly enjoying TNG.
Oh,
if you watch
it's
season
aged
1
well,
again,
but
it's
you
way
gotta
better
realize
than you thought
the
it was.
expectation for Star Trek in our generation, John, is like down into the shitter. The expectation for Star Trek back then was like up to the moon. So
I think that's part of the like benefit of rewatching it, especially for all these people you know that are starting to create it and take it over. Like you guys too should rewatch it because it's actually really fun. And it turns out that like their tech was a little
and
it's wonky.
We may organize some kind of rewatch where we do like either a handful of episodes or we decide like which the best ones are that we want to talk about and go through, and that might be something we do later this year, honestly, because that would be a good deal to promote good Trek. Speaking of promotions, however, we do need to take a quick little ad break to promote our sponsor, which today, this broadcast, because they are paying me to work there and keeping the lights on for the Ryder Brothers, today our sponsor is CnC Sutlery. They specialize in providing all of your Civil War reenactment needs, from uniforms to props to everything that's pretty much an authentic replica of the time period. Now you might be asking yourself, why are these idiots promoting a Civil War reenactment show? Because I work there, right? These guys, as it turns out, have also provided the costumes for other Paramount shows, including Yellowstone and 1883. So this is actually a huge deal for us. Other potential connections we can form over time and other opportunities are definitely available potentially through this, and I hope that we do get some through that. But at the same time, these people are really good at what they do. I'm very excited even just after one day of working there. I'm actually kind of looking forward to going to work tomorrow. Not like woo work, but like actually kind of, woo work. So yes, please check them out at cncsutlery.com. They are mostly an internet shipper, and they also ship internationally. So to our Canadian friends up north, if you guys need some Civil War gear that you might want, they can definitely ship it. And also if you live in Australia, the United Kingdom, wherever you are watching this broadcast, these guys are probably going to be able to ship to you, most likely. And so, please check them out if you have time. And like I said, they provide props for shows and movies and are trying to get more shows and movie deals. And so, well, we're in the show and movie business. So, as Orville Nation likes to say, we grow together.
So what you're saying is like, subscribe, and buy merch from our sponsors?
Yes. And we also are planning on getting a merchandise store for TWB in the very near future. Got some handcrafts from the wife, and of course we may put some other stuff together that you guys can contribute. We'll figure it out. But for now, please check out ccsutlery.com. They even have a list on there of all the movies and shows and theater productions that they've provided costumes for. And so if you know somebody in the business who is looking for a costume, or you yourself are looking for one, they got quite a selection. I walked through some of our inventory today. It's like walking through a museum. It's amazing. All right, that's enough ads for one broadcast. Kenobi has hit Disney Plus with both episodes 1 and 2. And some people are saying that Netflix's Stranger Things is doing better, which is cool. Good for them. But we're here to discuss Kenobi, starting with, of course, what we did not like. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and start us out once again? We'll do a Chris double feature this show with what we did not like.
It's actually a tough question to answer because we're 2 episodes in. And a lot of what troubled me about the first 2 episodes was just that I'm worried. I'm worried about whether where Star Wars is going overall. So I because there's been a lot of things I haven't liked, let's say in the last 10 years. So I'm kind of stepping into the show with that trepidation. Like, okay, I'm gaffing on names because I've had a long week.
Everyone does it.
But not to. I don't know how much we should go into spoilers here.
Oh, it's
all the way.
So the thing is with
100%.
us,
It
it's
comes
going
out-
to depend on the
next episode
subject
comes out
matter.
in 2
With
days.
shows like this that are weekly, even if we spoil it, it gives people time to catch up. And giving spoilers, really what we do in the service we provide on with our reviews is that people who are skeptical but don't want to make the time to watch the first couple episodes, we can give them an overview even with spoilers, and that might convince them, oh, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a try. And since we do like to promote products that we like, which, speaking for myself, of course, I do like Kenobi so far, but I agree, there is some cautious optimism to be had there. So go ahead. All spoilers when shows are running are on the table. Because we're not going to be able to spoil anything for the next few episodes unless somebody has, leaks or stuff, which, if you do, keep it to yourself. Please.
Because I think there's more I liked about it than I didn't. That's why it's a little hard for me to lead with what I didn't. But I will say, and this will probably get into more of a conversation if you all want to have it, because it's the one that spent the most time in my head, is at the end of episode 2, where Reva sticks the lightsaber through the Grand Inquisitor, and I just kind of, give me a lot to think about, because I've watched Rebels 3 times through, and the Grand Inquisitor is very much alive in Rebels, and I'm sure that as a show that is being watched, I mean, obviously they got a young Leia in their show. They are, they intend for a younger audience as well as an older audience to watch it. There's a lot of Rebels fans who are watching this show are probably thinking the same thing in that moment. Is like, what is even, and then it, the logical brain in me was like, okay, so he's not dead. It's just he's gonna be back alive in episode 3, and now he's gonna hunt Reva, and she's gonna get pushed to the light side because now she's getting hunted. And I thought about how am I gonna feel about that being the way the plot works out. Will I be satisfied by that being the plot arc? And honestly, I don't know. I actually really liked the Grand Inquisitor, the actor playing him, and and part of me, I was thinking to myself, I'd just be really satisfied if he was the main villain of this show. And I don't hate Reva, but I'm not really I don't know if I want to spend the 6 episodes watching her turn to the light side. And maybe that won't happen. But it gave me a lot to think about. And are they changing the canon? What does it mean? It's completely, what if the Grand Inquisitor is dead? So.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure. We'll see what tomorrow's episode brings. But I'm not so sure that he is dead, because a stab wound in Star Wars doesn't necessarily always mean death. We've seen people come back from worse. We've also seen people die from less. So death just seems to be an abstract in the Star Wars universe. But John, why don't you go ahead with your negative thoughts or just overall negative opinion towards Kenobi? What did you not like? And guys, we don't have to stretch these segments out to any particular time. If what we did not like sums up to the camera angles in frame 5225 were terrible, fine. If that's all we have for negative discussion, great. That's not a bad thing. But we are here to give honest and fair takes. And so, yes, if there is, even if just one of you, and especially even in the chat, it just has some bad things you want to say about it, fine. Go ahead. But you don't feel like you have to. If you don't, like, it's like when we did the book last week. I had to set it to general discussion because there was nothing about Forever War that I hated. So, but go with that. John, what did you not like about Kenobi, or what do you feel kind of about?
So, the biggest thing I feel more and more nervous about is the future, because like the first episode it's phenomenal. It tracks to me in all the ways that it should. Obviously the pacing was a little slow, but I feel like it was a pretty dense introduction. But then just a lot of people's commentary and a lot of people that seem like really into the lore and really into like the understanding of what either should or shouldn't happen and like what is happening based off of what they understand and what they've read. A lot of people make it seem like it's going to be this, you know, push for Reba to become light side. And my only hope in that instance is that Reva's been faking it the whole time. Like the reason she's so dark is because she has to act super dark. Like we have yet to actually see her kill anybody except for put the blade through the Inquisitor, and so maybe the main reason she's hunting Obi-Wan is because she knows him. I don't know if a lot of people know that there was this book that was about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn's experience before Naboo, before their first mission on Naboo. And in that experience, Obi-Wan helps out another Force-sensitive kid. And Qui-Gon Jinn take him and Obi-Wan back to the academy, and then they're like sent out on their next mission. But the Force-sensitive kid that they helped always wanted to go home and help her people. And so I get the vibe that like the gutter trash moment actually has a lot to do with that story. Is that she may be the Force-sensitive kid that Obi-Wan helped out, and that she is now old enough to catch up. She's a little young, comparatively, obviously. But that's the kind of like vibe I'm getting from her. But again, like as far as things I did
this Force-sensitive kid, did they return her back to her family?
No. So the reason that the whole book read a lot.
She still could be that little girl at the opening scene. Then that the youngling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. No. So that's what happens. They take her. It's like a very much like an Anakin situation, but this time she actually is young enough. But she's not even the main character that gets helped. I want to say she's the younger sister of the main character that Obi-Wan spends all his time with. But the big thing is that like the gutter trash stuff is like really canonical to that story in the sense that like they literally lived in a world where like the dystopia was the poor lived in the gutter and cleaned the gutter for the rich. And so that like comment kind of gave me those vibes. But the real thing that I'm getting from her is that she is a pitch perfect Sith. She knows that Vader is the ultimate Sith. Everybody that I've heard a lot about, actually I'll just wait for when we get to the next part before I go into all that stuff.
Yeah. Was there anything though that you want to just touch on that you didn't like, or are you satisfied?
Yeah,
overall?
as far as things I didn't like, I didn't like that Obi-Wan wasn't he didn't like leave any backup for Luke. He just trusted that Owen was good enough. I felt like that seemed a little negligent and out of character for him, but other than that, like, yeah, there's a lot I did like.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, if there's only one or two things, or if you guys don't want to speak on anything you don't like on anything we discussed, that is perfectly acceptable.
Oh.
This is just a formula we're doing to get the negative stuff out first, if there's any, and then we come back and see, all right, what do we like?
One thing I didn't like is the lack of emotional connection to the situation at hand from Princess Leia. During the time when blaster fire is going on, she's running like she's afraid, but she's also running very much like she knows what she's doing. And that seemed a little fake for somebody's first time in this reckless of a city.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, anything you did not like about Kenobi? I mean, I know you seem excited. I'm just wondering if there's anything at all that stands out.
There was, but and I'll try to say it in a way that works, but like my brain's very much like it bounces a lot when I have thoughts. So like a lot of the things, like it kind of refers to conversation we had a little bit ago earlier before about someone we watched, me and John specifically watched, and like things that they would say that like it's like there are things I disliked, but then there was things in relation to those things I liked, or at least I could give a certain level of like leeway of like whatever. Though I have had one question ever since I heard, and Chris mentioned it. I was curious where the Rebel series falls in line with this show, before or after.
Yes.
During, actually.
Yeah.
It's during.
That's why I said yes.
Okay. Because I was curious about that because I've never properly watched Rebels. I just know like a bunch of story beats from it, so I never actually knew what time frame it drops into. So that's interesting, to say the least. I do have thoughts I'll mention maybe when we talk about the good stuff that I think possibilities in relations to her as well as the Grand Inquisitor and where that could be going, because I have thoughts for that. That's not necessarily bad or good. Let me get my brain here. So like a lot of the first episode I didn't have too many issues with. I actually really liked some of the things, especially with like kind of how they were portraying Obi-Wan as made it very clear he's actively trying to blend in, and with his previous experiences, he, unlike some Jedi, I to me, out of a lot of the Jedi, especially from the prequels, if you will, because in timeline, it would make sense to me that out of a lot of the ones we saw, Obi-Wan would be one that has the potential to ignore things with the understanding of like, if I don't ignore it, that will lead to more death and problems, versus if I just keep my mouth shut right now and move forward. Sometimes you have to, because there was times where he did things that was a little toeing the line with what he technically should have been doing, which I think has to do with the Qui-Gon influence. So like there's a lot of things in the first episode I kind of liked. It was slow, but I didn't dislike that, because like John said, that there's a lot. It's slow, but there's a lot that kind of is being told in that, and that they convey across the episode. So like I can kind of work with especially in like the first couple episodes, like a first slow. I always treat pilots as their own kind of thing because they're a pilot episode. You have to convey a lot of information.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to what you're saying there real quick. I don't really. It's a hard line for me to cross at times when it comes to pacing, because people have gotten used to fast-paced bullshit, and there's a time and a place for that, like an Avengers movie. And then there's a time and a place for the slow burn. And, it's... I'm going to give credit to a product that I don't like, which is the first season of Picard. I actually liked the slow burn with the first, 3 episodes to just kind of set everything and get the mood going. I think that there is a time... And Star Trek The Motion Picture, same thing. It's slow movie, not super exciting in the grand scheme, but I think it's one of the best movies, not just best Star Trek, but one of the best sci-fi films of all time. And so... there is a logic to having a slower pace in the process. And so, yes, I agree with you. It's not super exciting, but you know what? There's plenty of other Star Wars products for super exciting. Not every Star Wars story needs to be well, Star Wars. We can
Well-
have...
Not to mention the start of the story isn't exciting. Like, they even tried to add in a
freaking
little
depressing.
sprinkle of excitement. Right? I am
Yeah.
really disappointed that, like, they shit on pretty much every person's favorite meme, which is Anakin just ganking the younglings. But I think at the same
That's a
time,
retcon
like,
I welcome.
well, yeah, exactly. Like, why would you ruin that in the first scene of Kenobi? That was Anakin's truest form as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But
So,
at the same time,
anyway,
like, it was slow, but it was absolutely necessary because it was supposed to be a slow start.
so Brandon, any other
mean-
negative thoughts before we skip over Curry?
Yeah. I thought for sure he was about to get ambushed when he ran into the, I don't know if I can call him a Jedi or not, the possibly grown-up Padawan / Jedi dude that you really don't know anything other than he's supposed to be some form of Jedi. I thought for sure that when he interacted with him in the middle of the night in the desert that was supposed to be a trap and that they were about to get jumped. Maybe that says something about me two shows in a row, or maybe that was residual feelings from because I watched that directly following Star Trek, so maybe that was just still my scope of mind. I don't know, but like it was super dark. There was a bunch of movement. I was like, are they about to? Is he about to get jumped by someone? Like what was going? And then that guy showed up, and I was like, oh, this is a trap. This is a trap all day, and it wasn't. It was just a genuine moment of like, I need your help, and he's like, you need to go bury your head in the sand and hide. But that was kind of it. Like the first episode, I didn't have anything I particularly disliked. I really liked the first episode, like even if it potentially does some weird things with canon. Like I individually by itself, I did like it. Most things that could be disliked would have been in the second episode. Definitely a few things that were a little bit of like gimmies. I even though a lot of people disliked it, I liked that, or no, that's a like thing. I shouldn't go down that road. My brain sucks sometimes. Like, he gets given the drugs by the girl on the street, where I can definitely have no issue with a random chick offering a dude drugs, because I've been to Vegas before. That is a real thing. Commenting on something from the video me and John watched where someone made a comment like, that doesn't happen. Like, yes, it does in the right places. People just come up to you and be like, you got some crack? Like that's a real thing.
I've been approached multiple times on the same walk to my car in San Francisco. It happens
Yeah.
Hey guys,
everywhere.
Hey guys, the girl that, by the way, that actress who was the dust dealer, is
I know
a
what you're gonna say.
major deep cameo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Ewan McGregor's daughter.
Yeah. Which is super cool.
It's
I will
just messed up because she said my dad left me here.
It's also Alec Guinness's something like niece or something like that. Like, she's got like 3 levels of connection to Star Wars.
That's pretty wild. I will say, the little boy who overhears him, that's a little, like, it's a thing of like, well, considering he's probably in the shady area, considering he was approached by someone just trying to sell him dust, and the business that the kid's in with the fake Jedi, like, that makes sense to a degree, but also it's, weirdly perfect placing, but that happens in movies a lot, so like I can't say too much against it.
The thing I've heard about a lot is like people are like, well, he's pretending to be a Jedi, so like, isn't he gonna get caught, right? But like, I bet you he's been caught 100 times, and they just go, oh, he's faking it. Give us half your or all your profits this time, and then he goes back to doing it again tomorrow. Like, the Sith aren't gonna, narc on anybody doing the wrong thing as long as they're not actually force sensitive. So like, I feel like that, like, I feel like this has been a run. Yeah, and not to mention he's working with the gate guards. Like, he's like, hey, look, we're gonna charge these people everything and get them out of here.
Yeah, it's
and you're
like,
gonna get some of it. And he's like, yeah, otherwise I get base pay.
Yeah, like the fake Jedi, I took the least amount of... I shouldn't say the least. I didn't take too many issue with it. I thought it was amusing. At first, I was like, is this dude really supposed to be a Jedi? Like, are you trying to convince me that this is a real Jedi? Because if you do, I hate you. And I'm going to hate you for doing this. And then it very quickly becomes clear, like, oh, no, dude, this guy's running a Ponzi scam. Oh, no, I now like this character because this is a thing I could... in these times, this is a thing I see happening. This is something I get. Like, you got me now.
It felt 100% real, and it also felt exactly like what the actor who played him would actually do in that world, in that instance.
I was actually hoping that he was a Jedi, honestly. Because, because, no, it would have been upset. Because it's the dark time. Yeah. But anyway, we'll get into that in a second. Corione, why don't you go ahead and share what you did not like? Unless, Brandon, there's anything else you wanted to add on real quick. Otherwise, I think most people are excited to get to the follow-up.
Yeah, I'm too flippant.
Okay, so I only really had 2 issues, and both of them, to be perfectly honest, are kind of they're nitpicky, and I think they're going to be fixed long term. The first one is the abduction of Leia. It happens. It's like the slowest chase scene ever, and that's saying something considering Book of Boba Fett, because like she's jogging away like a little kid who's being chased by her dad, like oh, catch me, right? And the weirdest part was these guys are kind of playing along with it, like they're not running at like a real adult pace.
Well, no, see, I got something to that. Like, one of the biggest things, it did do a pretty good like fix of itself. Like, if you actually look at where they're running into when it would zoom out to their backs, it's like, oh, she's dodging into these really tiny nooks and crannies. But what they're doing is the exact thing you do when you're trying to wrangle a hog, corner it.
Yeah.
And that's what they end up doing, like, perfectly. Because like when you're wrangling something in the woods, it can go left, right, or backwards forever. And obviously, like, there was a display of her understanding of the woods. They were like, she always runs there.
I mean,
so she has knowledge.
To be perfectly honest, they could have saved that scene entirely by putting in a throwaway line of like, we have to watch how quickly we move through here or it sets off alarms, right? That could have fixed the whole thing for me right then and there. Okay.
I will agree with you. When she's dodging through, there's a moment that I think it's the female captor is running behind her, and Leia ducks below this like chest level branch, and the girl comes around the corner, and it's not like she turns into the branch. She turns, then continues to run forward, and instead of ducking below this branch, just continues to run. I'm like, you had so much time. That branch started off like 7 feet away from you.
Well, no, see, she didn't like fall over on the branch there. She slapped it. Like, she was very intentionally wrangling the hog, like running up on it so it didn't go left, it didn't go right, it kept going forward. And then she slaps it, runs around, and then corners her on the left. Like, there was a very clear thing
like
that
I said,
they're wrangling a 10-year-old.
It's nitpicky. I'm not saying that it's something that couldn't be overlooked, but it was there.
It was believable when she got into the obstacles. Like, once a kid has like trees and stuff to dodge, that's when I was like, okay, this is what you should have opened with and left it at. Otherwise, I agree with you, Corione. But what's the last one?
And the last one is our third sister Inquisitor here. Look, if I'm gonna cast a Sith character that I want everyone to understand is either a Sith or what I'm gonna use as the term Sith-alike, I want somebody who is going to put take out some salt, take out some pepper, and just make a meal of the scenery. I want them like over the top, mustache twirling nonsense. I want it to sound like a Shakespearean level villain I'm dealing with here. And I really didn't get that from the character. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not sure where the problem is there. Because that could have very easily been a direction choice. That could have been the actor's choice. Or it could have been some sort of weird combination of just the way that they had to edit things together. I'm not 100% sure where I'm getting it from, that she just didn't seem to have that. Now, I have to believe that if you're going to get cast in a Star Wars anything, you do an audition, and I have to believe that if I think, hey, let's get somebody who's really going to chew on the scenery and just like be an over-the-top malevolent bad dude, we want to have somebody who fits that. So I feel like she's going to be really, really good in a scene coming up that we haven't seen yet. But the scenes that we've seen her in so far, she feels weak to me. And like I said, it may be the actor, it may be the direction, it may be the way it was edited. I don't know which. Awesome, Kitty! But that's just where I felt the weakness of the episode was.
What way do you mean weak? Weak in expression or weak in...
Just in her
display?
emoting, the way she spoke her lines, it felt kind of stilted. Like,
yeah, the very first line she ever speaks, it's so muffled out compared to all the lines before it. I had to turn my head and I was like, wow. Did you re-record that maybe?
Yeah. Midweek Progress, welcome to the discussion. Glad to have you here. Says, agreed, not sure where it's coming from, but whatever the case, the actress doesn't seem very strong. And
exactly.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see. We've got time. The thing is, the first couple episodes actually do follow in line with the first couple of scenes of a shoot. And that is, it can take a couple of takes and even a few scenes to have wrapped up before you find your strength. And so it's possible that, this happens often in the film industry. Somebody nails it in the audition.
My big question isn't so much about the literal feeling of weakness. I'm questioning, like you guys did say, like you're not exactly sure where it's coming from, but I'm wondering what exactly the muffled one. Yeah, that makes sense. But are there other?
What can happen is you can kill the audition, but once you start shooting, then the nerves come back. Then all of a sudden, it's live. It's
right.
Time to go.
That's well, and that's why I'm asking these questions, is because I want to know what you guys felt, because there were certain points that I hear a lot of people talk about on their reviews, and I'm like, no, those felt exactly like would happen in that situation.
Okay, so the stuff that I felt just didn't execute well was when she was talking to, I think it's the second brother, the dude with the hat.
Liu Kang.
Right? Yeah,
Dude,
Liu Kang.
Yes!
Yeah, Space Liu Kang. My issue with... Okay, so he's talking like they have literally grown up together. And she seems to be talking to him in a very formal, again, very stilted kind of manner. And I'm again, it could have been the editing, it could have been that they just picked a weird take, I don't know, but it didn't gel. She didn't gel with this person. It didn't feel like, yeah, we grew up together, but I'm still gonna try to get ahead of you in the game, right?
Wait, okay, I feel like people are...
I
feel like that's a misrepresentation of their relationships, because the whole brother numbering thing, that's the number of people that came before them.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
She's third sister. That means that there were two other sisters, and now she's the third one.
Okay.
So failures, and so that I think is where I don't remember I thought it was fifth brother.
So
somewhere.
Yeah.
So Liu Kang's character, he's been around the gig for a while, and third sister is she very much comes off as the newest operative in the operation.
Young, ambitious.
Yeah, and I got that feeling too. Like they were maybe directing her to come off as feeling under the others, and they even mentioned that in the second episode. It's like, you are under us. And I did feel like maybe she was trying to act like she had when a person has that lack of confidence, they will they will not act with they won't be forward, and
their confidence is even weird. And I think that's what she really portrayed, is that she very much is the newest member, but of the Sith team. And so as a member of the Sith team, you're always supposed to be showing why you're supposed to be number one. And she very much feels like she's acting like a brand new, arrogant, self-righteous genius.
I was gonna say arrogance was the word that I always came to.
But-
She to me
But
struck
that
me
I
as the
think
type
is what
that's
they're
confident
actually
in her own
trying to
ability.
portray. Like I
Well,
really
yeah,
felt
and that's-
like
and
she
that's fair.
accurately portrayed all of
I'm-
those traits,
I'm
and that's
definitely
what
not
this
disputing
young
that.
rookie is supposed to be.
Okay, but at the same time, we have one character who's completely tonally different in his communication than the other character in the scene. And in order for even
It shows that she's new to the team. Like
Okay,
that
but-
really displays how rookie she is. How
Okay,
like
I
this
agree with
may
both
be
of you,
her
honestly.
first join on the
Right,
team.
like-
Yeah.
Okay.
I also didn't get
No,
the
like, yeah, I
feeling
don't
from
actually
him.
think you're wrong in any way. That's what I'm saying is like I
that,
think the weakness was meant to be portrayed. It was more of like an actual non-verbal communication to the group that like
right,
hey,
but
this
my
is
my
not good.
issue is even if that's the case, even if it was supposed to be portrayed that way, it didn't succeed in making me feel that the character was being portrayed in a way that I was believing in it. Again, I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong or right. This is just how I felt about it, that it didn't work for me in this case. I personally think it's entirely possible that this was an editing issue, that they picked the best scenes that this character interacted with, and they didn't base it on her interactions, they based it on the other characters' interactions, and said, like, this is the best take we got from Liu Kang, we're using this. Right?
I
Man,
I feel like that's definitely possible, but at the same time, I kind of like I don't know if you're definitely talking about the hand cutting off moment, but to
I'm not
me,
necessarily.
okay, I was getting the vibe you were because that one in that moment
thought
where
it
she
was
talks to
post
Liu
that.
Kang, it really felt that like there's this new credence from the Empire of hearts and minds. Right,
Mhm.
because like even though they are the Sith Empire, they're trying to be the Galactic Empire as well. So they can't be all hearts and heads; they have to be hearts and minds. And so, I think that's like really that goes to show Reva's rookiness as an Inquisitor is that like she's still hearts and heads. She's like, I'm going to stab them in the chest and cut their head off. Like that's all I do. That's what a Sith is supposed to do. I'm gonna be just like Vader, even though she doesn't know who Vader is. She's heard of him. Like
Yeah.
and that to me was like kind of her inspiration. Is like this whole Kenobi thing is like she learned about it in basic training.
Yeah,
Now she's in the fleet. Now
she's
she wants to
definitely-
make her mark.
So the Inquisitors could best be described as basically lapdogs for the Sith. They are given only a certain amount of power. They only allowed a certain amount of leeway, so to speak. But ultimately, they are not technically Sith. However,
Well, see,
she
I've
is
been getting
definitely
mixed reviews for that.
what?
It seems like they are a version of Sith Guard in terms of like a special operations team. Their job is to assassinate and infiltrate.
They're a lesser Sith. They're basically meant to go do the dirty work that Vader doesn't feel like doing. It's basically it's a very basic way to describe them, but that's kind of how the hierarchy is. They will never be recognized as Sith. They will never be an apprentice. But that's what
Right,
she
because-
wants. She
Well,
wants
guys,
to be a Sith Lord.
I've got the perfect analogy for them. We all did slow horses.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Oh, there you
MI6's dogs.
yeah,
they're
they're
the
basically
That's
the Sith
exactly
Slough House.
exactly that's exactly what I was thinking for them is like
And
a version of Sith Navy SEALs because like they do seem to abide by a lot of the code, and it really felt like that's what Liu Kang's character was trying to do. Like there's gonna be a reward. Like he wasn't like, or else we kill the family. He was like, no, there's a reward. Like incentivize these people, idiot. Like we got to win them to our side. The Empire is now in charge, not taking charge. We are in charge. We help
like,
our citizens.
Am I the only one that feels like the third sister's about to be sent to Slough House? Like,
Yeah.
So
I get
I think
I get weird vibes.
and this kind of comes back to my thoughts on the third sister and the Grand Inquisitor. My thoughts were like everyone's like they're gonna try and make her good. My thought genuinely was more the direction of like he's not dead. He's gonna be gone for a little while to let everyone believe he's dead. They'll bring him up later on, and what's gonna culminate instead of her turning to the light side, however you want to phrase that. Instead, because the Inquisitors are very much like you guys are saying on this path of like we need to do this job we're doing and convince the people to like us at the same time, and like that you benefit yourself by helping us. And so they're on this task, and meanwhile she's like, I'm on this power grabbing warpath and I have the abilities to back it up. And so the arrogance is pushing through. I think it's going to be the creating your own death trap. She's gonna basically build things up, and it's all gonna collapse at the same time.
And we're gonna have to finish the conversation on the specifics of the Inquisitor with that for now, because we do have 4 more episodes to get through. However, I do want to make sure that we do get to the segment of what we did like. And I don't have a lot to say of what I didn't like, because I pretty much agree with a lot of what you guys, the points you made, but I don't have time to get into my specifics. But I also want to like this show. I'll be honest, full disclosure, I am rooting for it to be a success. I'm not sitting here, I hope it fails. No. We actually we really don't do that here on the Writer Brothers. We want to watch good shows, and if we don't like something, we'll probably do one episode. For example, our Halo review. That's the only time we talked about Halo in depth. That's the only time we are probably ever going to talk about Halo in depth. If you don't like something, don't watch it. That's the best advice that I can give anybody right now who's watching this now or hearing the recording. If you don't like it and you want to send a clear and concise message, don't watch it, don't talk about it, move on. Because these guys, they do thrive off of the negative reviews as well. They love the negativity as well, because to them, it's like we're affecting you in some way. That's how they see it, and it's
bad news sells.
Yeah, there's another pop culture enthusiast out there, RM Briggs, who's on Clobberin' Times channel, which is another good channel to check out. We'll give him a proper promo in the future. She has said it's like, I can't remember exactly what her words were, but it's something like, it's like a negative emotions economy or something along those lines. She phrased it better. I wish I had remembered exactly what episode she said it in, and I should have clipped it, because that was a great point that she makes about how they thrive on the negative reviews that a lot of people do. Well, we're just not going to participate in that. I mean, we'll give our feedback honestly and truthfully, and if we do like something or don't like something, as you have seen with our graphics, that's what we're going to give you here at the Writer Brothers. And we're not always going to be in agreement on things. There's stuff that some of us might not like or do like that we want to promote, and so it's going to vary from show to show. With that said, I do want to touch on what I absolutely love about this show and what it's done. Now, Corione and I have talked about this, and I'm going to let him build on my point the same way that he did when we talked about it in private. And so I'm just going to reiterate my stance on it. A lot of kids in John and I's and Brandon's generation, and Chris would assume, and Corione, maybe yours, actually, yeah, you guys too. Basically anyone who went and fought overseas, more or less grew up watching Kenobi in the prequel trilogy. And whether you were a young kid like we were, or I believe you guys were probably, how old were you guys when episode 1 came out? If you don't mind telling the world.
Tell me when the episode came out.
99?
I was old when the world was young, so...
14?
Okay.
I mean, I watched episode 2 many, 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 many times.
So, we've all had, in one way or another, we've all connected with Obi-Wan at one point or another. For me, he's always been my favorite Jedi Master of them all. He's the reason why I switched my lightsaber color from yellow to blue. Yellow being my favorite color, blue being my preferred Jedi color, because I really feel like a Jedi Guardian most of the time. I technically was a Guardian for 9 years. And I don't care what they say. Coast Guardsman is the stupidest thing they ever came up with. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing up military history and everything else is because...
That sounds like custodian.
A lot of kids in our generation grew up watching Obi-Wan. And now, those kids that especially went into combat zones, who came back and suffered PTSD, are now going to have this character to relate to when it comes to the hardship of loss. And I think that that is a tremendous opportunity that's been presented. And of course, it's going to depend on the overall execution of the show. A lot of commentators have expressed their fear about this resembling The Last Jedi, and I will all be honest, you're not entirely incorrect with that assessment. However, we already know what happens to Obi-Wan. We already know, and yeah, spoiler alert in episode 4, so he's going to live through this series, guys. I know, shocker. We know what he becomes. What a lot of people don't understand is that the strongest person in the room, especially during times of hardship, it's not always the strongest person that you remember. They might put on a face in front of you. They might put on a face in front of the camera. But they're feeling the same pain that you are through whatever hardship it is. And so with Obi-Wan, here we are seeing what he went through. He's lost his family. He's lost his religion, essentially. The REM song, I think, is perfect for Kenobi. He's lost his faith. And he knows what he has to do. He just doesn't think he has the strength to do it. And that's what we are being shown in this series. We are being shown how he becomes the man we see in episode 4. How he gets his resolve back. You know, he wasn't wanting to stay and just watch Luke because that's what his mission is. He wanted to stay and watch Luke because he didn't think he could, because he thinks he's done. He thinks he's, at this point in time in this show, he thinks it's over for him. He doesn't see, all he can think about, all he can do is have the nightmares of the failure and what he should have done better. And so I think in a lot of ways that can relate to a lot of soldiers that went and suffered through that. Now they have their one of their favorite Jedi characters that's literally going through the same thing. And now they can see one of their heroes, someone they always looked up to, have to go through a similar trial and a similar hardship. And I think that is probably one of the best things. And Corione, I think you have an eloquent way of adding on from what I'm saying here, so please go right ahead.
Yeah, so I do cover a lot of this in my video, so please check it out. But
yes, absolutely. John, put the link to his latest video in the chat, please.
But I will say this. Look, in the last movie where we see Obi-Wan, he's lost his family. He's lost all of his friends. He's lost the world he knows. And then after all that loss, he had to go to some strange planet and kill the boy he raised, who he's treated like a brother for a long period of time. I can't imagine the pain and suffering that all of that loss, and then having to go and murder the one person you have left that you care about, right? Because as far as he's aware, as far as he's concerned, that's what happened, right? The last time he used the Force, the last time he used those combat instincts, those military instincts that we've, all had to train for, he used those to kill the person he loved as a brother. So it's no wonder he shut himself off from the Force. It's no longer wonder he shut himself off from his day-to-day life. He picked the most monotonous, basic, straightforward, going through the motions he possibly could, so he wouldn't have to confront that pain, that trauma. Because he knew that if he opened that box, he'd really just start crying and wouldn't be able to stop. And I think anybody who's seen combat can relate to that in some level. And having Leia show up in his life and be so much like Padme, so much like his sister-in-law, because he knew they were married, right? So this is his adoptive sister-in-law, and he's seeing that girl basically be a little Padme, and it's bringing him back. It's bringing him back to the realization of, I'm still needed here. I still have a purpose. I don't have to just go through the motions because people need me. And that's a very powerful motivator to move forward in one's life, is being needed. And yeah, it took Bail Organa kicking him in the butt to get him out the door to get
Quite
going.
literally.
Well,
But-
I think that's a misconception. It wasn't so much Bail Organa kicking him in the butt; it was Bail Organa forgiving him.
That too.
Because there's a lot of that. Like, I feel like I'm personally responsible for literally raising the death of the Jedi, and then
Right.
Bail goes, "Dude, none of us saw this coming. It's not your fault. You gotta take that burden off yourself."
Right, but
And then, like,
and-
that's not so much a kick in the butt as it is a forgiveness, and then a like pick yourself up.
yeah,
You know, he needed somebody to relieve him of his burden.
and I think he also has a lot of survivor guilt too, right? Because as far as he's aware, for a good long while, it's him and Yoda were the only survivors, right?
Well, and not to mention, like, even when he meets this kid, a lot of people say it's super cruel that, like, he tells him to quit the fight, go live a normal life, and it's like,
No,
no,
he's
as
trying
far
to
as
save him.
Yeah, there is no other option. Like, being a Jedi, like, there's a lot of things about being a Jedi that are great.
Yep.
And you can, like, adhere to them. But, like, you can't be Superman in a world that is literally hunting you. You have to be normal, man.
Even just
That's
consider
your
this.
new...
Even just consider this. I 100% believe that if Obi-Wan had a ship stashed away somewhere in the desert, like it was just like buried under the sand or whatever, he would have 100%
Well, the Jawa,
said,
the
Well-
Jawa said they broke it. They found it.
right. Well, I'm just saying if he had that ship lying around, I 100% believe he would have taken the kid and said, "This is the coordinates to my ship. Unbury it, get on it, go to any other planet in the galaxy, and just go to ground. You know, become a construction worker. You know, go break down Imperial starships like a certain young Cal Kestis was doing in Fallen Order. Like whatever." But he can't, because when you think about it, he can't have the Jedi here. He can't let him know why he can't have the Jedi here, because they do have the capability to read people's minds. He can't actually admit to being Obi-Wan because, again, they can read people's minds. And he's trying to, at the same time, still try to save this kid.
Yeah,
he
and
has
try
to
to
be
save him from
cold, but he's
himself.
very specific. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. He's trying to save him from himself. Like, dude, yes, I get the code, but hang the code.
I was totally okay with his portrayal in that scene.
His first
But
and
also,
fo-
like, he's
his
a
first-
general versus a teenager.
Yeah,
You know,
his-
like,
his
he's a
first
hardened.
His first and
retired
only
general.
duty is Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
He is, and the safety and protection of
Exactly.
Luke is his primary
Yeah,
responsibility.
so he's not even
So-
retired. He's an active duty 60-year-old general. You know, 50, I think, because he's 60 in the
Right,
A New
but he
Hope.
only
Like-
has one mission, and that's to keep Luke a secret. Which now I'm noticing a plot hole, kind of by necessity. Unfortunately, like they should have changed his last name.
see-
But
I already know that. See, there's the plot hole that people like are mentioning, and that's the thing that like, how is he hiding him from Anakin on Tatooine? And it's because he thought Anakin was dead, but Anakin has been told for sure and confirmed by the Emperor, Padme and the children died.
Mm-hmm. And
So
why?
the reason why nobody's looking for Luke and Leia is because they're dead. But Organa and Kenobi's relationship is too close, and that's why they couldn't call in the military. I've watched this like 4 times, and I literally read the script today, like line by line. It says the reason they called Kenobi is because they cannot bring any suspicion on her relationship to them.
all right, real
Because
quick,
anybody
Brandon,
will trade any information to the Empire.
Brandon, what did you like? You were excited to talk about this. We will be talking about it, of course, next week. But let's try to get some more positive thoughts from Brandon and Chris, real quick, to close us out.
I liked quite a bit. I mean, it wasn't perfect, obviously, but I mean, I don't expect perfection, especially with, you know, some of what we have gotten. I really liked the first episode. I'm curious how, like, there's one point I've heard made in regards to the Rebel series and Kenobi, like, very suavely just dispatching Darth Maul, but also having taken in Rebels, and then also taking this huge break across these 10 years, even though in theory he's supposed to have been training. I'm curious to see how they try to deal with that, or if something happens and he gets really strong or something throughout this series. I'm willing to wait to see where this goes.
I think there definitely is an answer, but I'll wait to give it.
I believe there could be. I like the fact that in the first episode, part of the reason it's so slow is you see him repeating this monotonous work. But it's not just monotonous. He has a like incredibly specific dull routine he does. It shows him he does his work. He cuts off his slice of meat. He wraps it and hide it. Though I kept expecting the work overseer to call him out on that. Kind of surprised that didn't happen, because it's super in the open. Like, it's not even that stealthily done. He just kind of does it. And considering they like cut pay down, which I liked that moment. That was the first indication of like he's not like, because they do the setup of, you know, a Jedi can't help but want to help, and then there's that scene is like almost immediately after that. So they had the nice setup of transitioning to that where he just looks at him and has that urge to be like, you're a douche. Like, but he's like, he just takes the money and leaves. But with that, you show that he has developed this routine. And what do people do? They create routines in day-to-day boring life. You do the same thing over and over and over. So it does a good job of like cementing, like he's doing something.
He's never not done this.
Yeah. So like, for the most part, I mean, first episode in general I liked. It was definitely slow. I know people who wouldn't like it because of that, but I liked what they were trying to translate with it. And I feel like for the most part, they did well. I do get Corione's points with the third sister. She definitely... I have mixed feelings on, depending on what they tried to convince me of with her. I thought the Inquisitors, like the rest of the Inquisitors, specifically the Fifth Son and the Grand Inquisitor, I liked their portrayals of like they're very much in the same understanding. Like the Fifth very much understood what the Grand Inquisitor's saying, doing, his intention with the whole scene, and it's consistently, like there's consistency in that of like, I understand what needs done, I will do what you need me to do. Like, they're on the same page while she's just doing her whack stuff. And so, but in the second episode, because I feel like the second can be picked apart more, because it has a little more divergence in a lot of ways. A lot of people complain that he didn't use his lightsaber because he could easily start dispatching people, but you're also trying to stay hidden, and if you start flashing around this bright, flashy blade that cuts through things, like, yeah, you can cut through people, but you also become a beacon. Like, although you do have this child who just keeps yelling the word Jedi every time you turn around, incessantly. Just, oh, you are a Jedi. Are you a Jedi? Jedi. Like, oh, cool. Thanks, child.
Say it so the whole
Shut up.
Can hear.
Like, but the hand-to-hand combat was done really well, and they did something that I love to see in when combat scenes that I refer to and associate with Jackie Chan combat scenes, because he's one of the main people I've seen talk about it, though obviously other people have done it. And one of the things Jackie Chan always has done when he choreographs a fight scene is you can't have a hero, like in a fight scene, particularly hand-to-hand, the hero can't be overly powerful, like especially if you're fighting a group of people. The hero, there's no way for one man to fight 20 dudes nonstop and take no hits. It's not happening. It's not realistic. So you see this man who's used to using a saber, but has been trained otherwise, fighting people and taking hits because he's not using a lightsaber. If he was using a lightsaber, he could walk through this hallway, Darth Vader through the hallway, call it a day, find this child, cut the door open, like. But he's not doing that. He's trying to do things subtly. Like, I liked the scene in the drug shop where he like does, you know, mixes stuff together improperly, causes a distraction, though when he walks in the next place, he immediately takes everything off because we got to see Ian McGregor's face. And then fights in there, and then there's the fight scene where he drops the dust he got from his Totally Not His Daughter. Like there were some moments that I liked, although on the flip side, when they're on the rooftop and he's having a shootout with these two bounty hunters, which someone made the point of, I like that he does miss a bunch because he's not a blaster user, so like he's using blasters, which is very not him.
But he's also never not looking backwards.
Yeah,
he's almost always, every shot is pew pew.
But also
like
with
he's
that,
always looking at Leia.
One thing I could have brought, which I didn't think about in the dislike, that scene did bug me though, because you have the shootout with two bounty hunters at one point with him, and she is directly behind me. You're gonna convince me that you're missing him towards her with her in line, and you don't clip her? Like, she was literally in the path of fire, nowhere to be hit, and I'm like, you have set this child in your path of fire.
her Jedi Force power is plot armor,
dude. Like, I mean, I will say I did see some people complain about her like possibly intuitively using her Jedi like Force abilities, and they're like, that was never canon. She didn't start figuring out how to do that until I was like, yeah. Well, the thing with my dispute with that is she doesn't understand or start to realize that she can do it until those was it episode
Luke trains
5?
her after episode 6.
Yeah, but my point to that is like up until I think it's episode 5 or 6, she doesn't realize she can do it. That does not mean she couldn't have been intuitively doing these things.
No,
if you don't know and you think it's normal,
Anakin Skywalker was 100% Force. And that means that Leia and Luke are 50% Force each.
Part of what gets him noticed in the first place.
Most powerful beings besides Anakin, who's half a person himself.
So right now is a perfect example of why we really should contemplate going to a 3-hour show. Because we're down to our last 10 minutes, and Chris, I want to give you a chance to express what you did like. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I liked Leia. To be honest, it's a big risk casting a child actor in a prominent role, let alone an established character like Leia. And I don't know for sure if I like it in terms of it wasn't necessary for the story, but I like it in terms of I like her in her portrayal of Leia. I believed she was Leia the whole time. Felt like Leia to me, and honestly, the scene between her and Senator Organa. If you told me that George Lucas himself directed that scene, if he was like a secret guest director in that scene, I would have believed you, because when I saw that scene, it felt so much like George Lucas to me that it just kind of struck me. I almost watered up a little bit, and maybe it seems like a not like. Really, not the first scene that everyone would think of as that was the best scene in Disney Star Wars. Maybe it's not the best scene in Disney Star Wars, but it was kind of one of my favorites, to be honest. So I like that, and I think there's potential there to lean into that dynamic.
Yeah. So now we've got. I assume that's otherwise you pretty much hit everything. We've got Strange New Worlds giving us a strong father character with Dr. Mbenga, and now we have now we're seeing that same kind of similar but in its own special way with Bail Organa, and I think that's fantastic to kind of see that come back into the mainstream. That yes, you can have strong there are bad parents out there, and that's fine to have stories about Darth Vader being a bad dad, but it's also there's also good ones out there. So
don't forget Owen is portrayed as being a strong father figure, as an uncle, an adoptive father. That's a new one.
He comes
we
off.
haven't seen a positive adoptive father, and then not to mention Bail Organa is not just being a strong male father, he's also being an educational male father. He knows the wit that he is raising. He knows like he knows all of Padme's accomplishments. He admired her forever. She was like one of his greatest friends in the Senate, and so that to me goes to one of the points that a lot of people complain about, like how does Obi-Wan and Organa actually have any kind of war connection, and it's Padme. Like everything Padme did, Organa was near, which means every time Organa needed any kind of help, the first Jedis he relied on was Obi-Wan. And so while we may not have any episodes that show us those experiences, like as far as senators go, they very all clearly had their favorite Jedi to call. A lot of them liked Anakin because he was supposed to be the best, and Palpatine was like pimping him out. But like Obi-Wan was called on by the faithful, by the like, because as far as knights and masters go, Obi-Wan was the most mobile.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of chance for them to have a lot of wartime relationship on various levels. Maybe not direct conflict experience, but at the same time, as close as you can get between a senator and an actual frontline general.
Yeah, and I will also say this too. I really like that all of the trailer footage has pretty much been played out at this point. Most of what we saw in the trailers, we saw in the first couple episodes. So we're going into uncharted territory, and I'm cool with that. That's probably the way that shows should be teased from now on. Just show the first couple episodes in your trailer, and then let us decide if we want to watch the rest. But also don't like have scenes in there for expectations, because that was one of the downsides of playing the Severance trailer over and over. Like, oh hey, that hasn't happened yet. Oh hey, that hasn't happened yet. Oh hey, we get to look forward to that. And it's like, well, that kind of ruins the experience a little bit. So, all right, any last real quick positive thoughts for Kenobi before we hit the final? Well, we're pretty much in the final home stretch at this point, but
yeah, right.
I mean, just as a really quick note, obviously it's Ian McGregor, and we know he's a good actor, and we know he knows Obi-Wan and all that jazz. I will say, the very end, when the third sister tells him about Anakin, his selling on that was so good, and the ending, staring at him and then transitioning over to Vader, dude, that I was like, all right, listen, you dude.
The thing that gets to me, so the best point I think is the fact that like Obi-Wan did take a second to save Leia, but like in reality it was maybe 2 seconds. Like he had to reach out for the Force, grab it again, and then the way that he caught her was in the most masterful way, right? Like he brought the Force up to her and then brought her back down, gentle as a feather. Like that was no Luke trying to get a rock up on another rock. That was like, and it took him all of like 3 seconds, and he just had to decide like, is it okay to risk getting caught? Because I don't know if anybody noticed, the moment the Inquisitors found out that the third sister had done her job, they were like, get a brigade down here immediately. So like the reason why Obi-Wan is hiding is because as soon as his name shows up on the charts, everyone's looking for him, and he just knows that that's because of his relationship to Palpatine and being a member of the Jedi Council, right? Like he literally is on the most wanted list, and so he knows that, and that's why he's playing so discreet. And I think that like a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. Like all throughout all of Star Wars, everybody who wants to remain anonymous wears a cloak. So like, yeah, he may be wearing his saber on his hilt, but like the only reason people like Leia know about that is because their family knew about it, and they tell family stories at bedtime. Humble brags, you know, inspiration for your children to grow up to and live up to. Like Organa and his wife experienced that. And they also like, that explains a lot of like why Leia's character is so aggressive, is because she grew up as an adopted, loved child. Like these parents are actively teaching her how to be a senator, like Richie Rich child, which was the last thing I really wanted to commend the show for, was the fact that like we finally have a visible wage gap. Like in the rest of the series as it's known, we've only really seen like the opera, but now we've seen like a rich person's droid, and it's like the ultimate iPhone, right? Whereas like every other droid we've met is borderline a bucket of bolts.
Okay, I'm just putting this out there now. All my headcanon now reads that all the stormtroopers, when they're issued their playing deck, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the Jack of Diamonds. Called it.
Dude, that's it. It has to be.
Yep.
Like, that's what I mean though, is like but he does everything to portray that, and I think that's like one of the main reasons why he has no connection to the physical force, is because like he knows how much that just one peeping Tom, which the Jawa came from the back of his house. It didn't come from the front door, it came from the back door. So that means like if he was practicing yoga at any time, moving rocks, people are seeing that. But the moment that he finds out Anakin's alive and he gets on the ship, he goes, Anakin. And Anakin wakes up in his tank, which means that like he's been actively flexing the force this whole time, trying to talk to Qui-Gon. Like, so he's flexing the internal mental meditative force that he can control, but he can't like actually do his lifting rocks and stuff because that's going to get witnesses. Witnesses want money, especially in the Outer Rim, especially next to Luke. So he's like completely discreet about it.
He's passively connected to the Force before he reaches out for Leia. The same way Donnie Yin's character in Rogue One was connected to the Force. He didn't have the power, but he could hear and understand it. And so he's not being overtly about. So yeah, I think that's a correct assessment. But unfortunately, that's about all the time we're going to have to discuss it this week. However, we will be back. We got a packed show coming next week with Strange New Worlds Episode 5, Kenobi, and of course the return of the Orville. My name is Peter York with the Ryder Brothers. Thank you to everybody who watched tonight. We hope to see you again. And with that, we will see you next week.